Welcome back to the Dershow. Lots of new legal developments surrounding politics. We'll talk about the Menendez indictment. We'll talk about the Hunter Biden indictment. But first, I want to start with yesterday's breaking news, and that is that Donald Trump was found civilly guilty. That is, no prison time, but a very, very large fine and other large economic consequences for fraudulently, the court claimed without a jury trial, fraudulently overvaluing uh, some of his property. But among the properties the court found that he overvalued was Mar-a-Lago. Um, he valued it as several $100 million, I think $600 million or something like that. And the court said that no, the tax assessment of Mar-a-Lago was only between 18 and 27 million dollars. Tell you what, if he wants to sell it to me for 18 to 27 million dollars, I'll borrow the money and buy it because I could sell it tomorrow for hundreds of millions of dollars. So, yeah, the judge found that Trump overvalued, but I find that the judge undervalued. You can't value a property based on tax assessments. You value a property based on what it could sell for, and the experts on that are obviously real estate people. There have been uh, pieces of property near Mar-a-Lago, much smaller, much less valuable, that are on the market for $200 million, not 18 or $27 million. So I think the judge has to go back to accounting school and do a little bit more research on how you evaluate unique properties like Mar-a-Lago, and I bet you that the value is a lot closer to what Trump put on it than what the judge put on it. But we'll wait and see, and there'll be appeals, obviously. All right. So Menendez, Robert Menendez, senator from New Jersey, a very good senator, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. He's done a lot of good things for the United States and on behalf of the United States in foreign affairs and foreign relations. He's been indicted for taking money and gold bars and cars and gifts in exchange for doing favors for people, including the Egyptian government, etc. Um, we'll wait and see. There's a presumption of innocence there as well. We don't know what the facts will show, but many Democrats are now saying, "See, the Justice Department really is fair. It's equal. It's just." It indicted a Democratic senator. Now, the fact that the senator has been a pain in the neck to President Biden and to the Democrats in general because of his stance against the Iranian nuclear deal and other uh, positions that the administration favors, that has been deemed irrelevant. But is the indictment of Menendez proof that the Justice Department is engaging in equal justice? Well, my view is maybe it's proof that they're engaging in equal injustice. I've read the indictment in the Menendez case, and the important thing is not what you read in the indictment. That's just dry words. But the indictment and the show and tell that was put on when the indictment was made public includes these pictures now, which are indelibly in the mind of every potential juror and every potential witness. The pictures of gold bars. A lot of people have gold bars, especially small gold bars like this. And then there's the pictures of his jacket with his name on it, with cash spread out on the jacket. Now, I doubt that the jacket was found that way by the FBI. This has all the earmarks of a staged picture, a picture staged by the FBI or staged by the U.S. attorney in order to influence the potential jury pool and perhaps influence the judge and perhaps influence witnesses. If that sounds familiar to you, it should. Remember the photograph that appeared in the indictment of Donald Trump in Mar-a-Lago, there too, there was a staged photograph of classified material spread out on the floor, with an emphasis on the first of those items that says, secret, 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 secret. These are images that can never be erased. They are indelibly in the mind of jurors. And although I don't think either of these pictures will be admissible in court when the trial occurs, you never know, but they'd have to show that they were authentic pictures, not staged pictures. They will have a major impact on jurors. Jurors will always remember, oh yeah, we remember, we saw those pictures of classified material spread out all over the floor. That surely does seem to prove that he had classified material and he knew it. Or in the Menendez case, they'll say, yeah, we remember the pictures of the gold bars and the car, and particularly that jacket with his name on it, with cash coming out of the pockets. But was the cash in the pockets, or was it coming out of the pockets when the FBI actually found it? That we'll have to see if and when the case comes to trial and the government tries to introduce these or other photographs into evidence. I don't think that the Justice Department should be staging photographs. I don't think they should be showing photographs or showing that kind of evidence that have such an impact on jurors and judges and witnesses. Why do I say witnesses? Because if witnesses are on the fence, which side do we go to? Should we side with Menendez? Should we testify for him? Or should we make a deal with the government? If they think the government has a slam dunk case that is going to win, obviously they're going to be more inclined to make a deal with the government. So these staged pictures potentially have a real impact. Judges, jurors, witnesses. And that's their intention, to influence the court of public opinion. And I don't think prosecutors should be doing that. I don't think prosecutors should be trying their cases in the court of public opinion. You may answer, well, Donald Trump tries his case in the court of public opinion. He's entitled to. He has a First Amendment and a Sixth Amendment right to defend himself in the court of public opinion. The government doesn't have First Amendment rights. The government doesn't have Sixth Amendment rights. The government's interest is supposed to be only in producing a just result. And a just result is less likely when you have these kinds of photographs spread out. So instead of proving equal justice, maybe these two cases, Menendez and Trump, prove equal injustice. How about the Biden case? Well, we don't know what the Biden case really is yet. All we know is that he's been indicted for a gun charge, 3 gun charges relating to his acquiring or possessing a pistol while he was using drugs. But we really don't know how that case is going to play out. But the mere fact that there have been indictments of Democrats and Republicans doesn't show that there's equal justice. What it shows is that the Justice Department can play dirty pool against Democrats and Republicans, against people from Biden's side and people from Trump's side. We'll have to wait and see how the cases unfold before we decide whether there's justice or injustice. Now, in the Menendez case, I don't really know Senator Menendez, but I like his positions. He's one of the few Democrats who really is a centrist and somebody who's pragmatic and somebody who doesn't go with the squad and somebody who doesn't necessarily follow orders from on the top, which was proved by the unwillingness of Menendez to vote for the Iran deal, that was the terrible Iran deal that was pushed through by President Obama without really even a vote in the Senate. As you know, I believe that the Iran deal was a treaty, and I read the Constitution as it was written, and the Constitution says that a treaty requires 2/3 of the Senate to approve it, and there were not 2/3 of the senators willing to approve that treaty. So instead, it was pushed through as an executive order, and there was a vote, and it was a majority vote. And Menendez dissented and didn't vote with the majority. Neither did Senator Schumer. So it was not anything like the entire Democratic Party supporting it. And Menendez has been a pain, as you know, a pain to the Democratic leadership. As you know, Menendez was tried previously for something maybe not similar, but related. It was alleged that he received benefits, financial benefits, in the form of vacations, air flights, etc., in exchange for doing constituent favors for an old friend of his who was an optometrist. And the jury hung, and then the Justice Department dismissed the charges, and he was completely set free. And that may happen here too. We don't know. These cases are much easier to try in the press than they are in the court of law. The court of public opinion doesn't have rules of evidence, and you can create pictures that don't reflect reality or reflect staged perceptions of reality by the Justice Department rather than admissible evidence. So this is not a slam dunk. And as the result of that, I support Senator Menendez's decision not to resign. Many Democrats have urged him to resign. But I support his decision not to resign. If the presumption of innocence means anything, it means that you don't make decisions like that to uh, violate the will of the voters. The voters put him in office. He didn't decide to be in office just by himself. He was voted into office, and he shouldn't be forced to resign based on an indictment. We know the old saw that the New York Court of Appeals chief judge said that a grand jury, if a prosecutor wants to indict somebody, the grand jury will agree and indict a ham sandwich. And the grand jury did indict here. And we don't know what the grand jury saw. Did they see these pictures, or did they see the real pictures of how the evidence was found? Was the cash in the pockets? He says, and we have to test that by cross-examination too. He says he comes from a Cuban refugee family, and when you're a Cuban refugee family, you hide money in the event you want to leave. I know that many Jewish people in Europe in the eve of the Holocaust hid money and diamonds and gold in order to escape. Abraham Lincoln's wife had bonds after her husband was assassinated. She had bonds that were worth a lot of money, and she didn't trust banks. She sewed them into her dress. So it doesn't prove guilt that you have cash stuffed in pockets. It might be relevant. It might be evidence if they can prove it. And I think they can, because he's essentially admitted it. And having gold bars doesn't prove guilt either. There are a lot of people, every time you go on Fox News, somebody's advertising gold. You need gold. We're going to have inflation. Our dollars are going to be worthless. Buy gold, buy gold, buy gold. And you can buy these little gold bars. In fact, I just saw in the paper that after the picture appeared of the gold in the Menendez indictment, people who sell gold bars, the small gold bars, 1 ounce gold bars that are worth around $2,000, have sold out. They've become very popular. They're now the Menendez gold bars. People are buying them. Obviously, not everybody who's buying them is hiding money that was paid to them by bribery. So let's maintain the presumption of innocence. Let's maintain a high degree of skepticism of the Justice Department. By the way, not just this Justice Department. I've been fighting the Justice Department since the day I got out of law school. First case I ever had was a case where we were able to prove that the Justice Department played around with tapes, and I got my clients acquitted as a result of government misconduct. So I have been holding the Justice Department to a high standard in the adversarial system for the last 60 years, and I'm not going to stop now. It doesn't matter to me whether it's a Democratic or a Republican Justice Department. As a defense lawyer, my job is to always challenge the Justice Department. Now they're challenging back. Look what they did yesterday, even in the fraud case involving the president. They held two lawyers were subject to sanctions. They have to pay $7,500 each to some fund because they said things the judge disagreed with. As you know, I've been sanctioned by an Arizona judge because I demanded transparency in voting machines, and let's see what happens. I believe what I said. I think it was right, and I'm obviously appealing the order. But the point is that sanctions are now being used against people, lawyers who have defended Trump. There's this group called the 65 Project that has overtly said, we're going to file bar complaints and other disciplinary matters against any lawyer who has anything to do with Donald Trump. And when I said I would defend anybody who was targeted by this neo-fascist McCarthyite group, what did they do? They filed a bar complaint against me. And so I'm fighting them. I'm fighting for the Constitution. I'm fighting for your rights as well as my rights. And I'm not going to give up. I'm too old to give up fighting against the Justice Department, against others who would try to deprive all Americans of their constitutional rights in the name of some end that they believe is justified. I think it was Justice Brandeis who once said, the greatest dangers to liberty lurk in men and women of zeal who will do anything to achieve their results, but without understanding. And that's what's going on now. I think the Get Trump posse, and I wrote my book, Get Trump, based on these considerations that are now playing out. The Get Trump posse is obviously willing to do anything to prevent Trump from regaining office, especially now that there have been some polls. Maybe they're outliers, I don't know, but there are polls now that show Trump ahead of Biden. It doesn't seem likely to me, living in an area which is highly Democratic, but that may be the case. And remember, too, that Trump doesn't have to win the popular election to become the president. He didn't win the popular election in 2016. He lost quite decisively, but he won the electoral vote, and he lost the popular vote even more decisively in 2020. And he came close in the electoral vote, a matter of, several tens of thousands of votes in either direction could have, changed the results of that election as well. So it's not out of the question that Trump could be elected president, not with my vote, but with the votes of many Americans. And Americans have the right to vote for whoever they vote for. And I will support, as a loyal American, any president who was legitimately elected president of the United States. Speaking of which, I would still like to see the appointment of an election commission of neutral, objective, non-political people who can assess any claims of election fraud, because I don't trust the current people who are assessing those claims. They are either Republicans in the House or Democrats in the Senate, or judges who are appointed by Democrats or Republicans. I do think we need an objective commission, as they have in England and Israel and many other countries, an election commission that could in real time assess all the claims of election misconduct, or even not misconduct, just election mistakes. And so we can be assured that the 2024 election is not going to be subject to challenge, because if we don't put something like that in place, it will be subject to challenge. We know that Donald Trump will challenge if he loses. And I assure you that if it's a close election and the Democrats lose, there will be challenges on their side as well. So I'm hoping we can preempt those and prevent them by the appointment of some kind of a commission that can oversee the election and make sure that whichever side you vote for, in the end, you'll be satisfied that the counting was clear and that the results were clear. And that if we're going to use election machines, we have to make sure that those election machines are subject to adversarial testing. There are lawsuits now, as you know, involving Dominion and Smartmatic and others. But as far as I know, they have not been willing to subject their algorithms and their machines to adversarial testing. And unless that happens, people of the United States are just not going to trust machines. Artificial intelligence maybe the future of mankind, but Americans have to be able to trust machines and machines that determine who the next president of the United States will be. So, I am not thrilled about our state of respect for the law today or the law itself today. And let's see. Keep an open mind. Be critical. Always be critical. Was it Reagan who said trust but verify? I would change that a little bit. Distrust and verify. Show me, prove it to me. America has always been a skeptical country. Our citizens demand proof. They don't want to take orders from people. And so distrust and verify. That's our slogan. So let's take some questions. You keep saying Ukraine is democratic, but fail to mention that Z-Dog canceled all elections. Well, elections are frequently canceled temporarily during times of crisis and times of war. I wish there were elections, and Zelensky would be overwhelmingly elected if there were an election. In Ukraine today, democracies are a matter of degree. Ukraine has never been the kind of democracy that the United States has been, but it's been a lot more democratic than Russia. Wait. 90 years old today implies that this Ukrainian guy, this is the guy who got honored the other day by Canada without a disclosure that he had been in the Waffen SS Galitzin Corps, which was a murderous group of war criminals, that this guy was 18 in 1943 and 19 in 1944 and 20 in 1945. You have no idea of the circumstances of his joining. I do. It was a volunteer army. I do have evidence of that. Or any participation in atrocities? Yes, we do know that the unit itself was involved in atrocities. And you're eager to deport the guy 75 years after living in Canada? Yes, I am. I don't care if he's 110 years old. He doesn't deserve to live out his life in peace and in respect. And shame on Canada for allowing him to do it. They knew. They had to know that a lot of these so-called Ukrainian heroes were Nazis, and they allowed them to hide their Nazism and welcome them after saying that no Jews would be allowed to come in during the Holocaust. Which leads me to another question related. The book was actually called None is Too Many. Remember, I talked about a book written by a very distinguished historian named Irving Abella, whose wife happens to be a great judge in Canada. And he wrote the book called None is Too Many, in which he proved that the Prime Minister of Canada, Mackenzie King, participated in the exclusion of Jews from Canada during the Second World War. The Canadian government played a shameful role, and then immediately opened their doors to Ukrainian Nazis. And Canada's a great country. Everybody loves Canada, but Canada was an outrageous country between 1938 and 1948, and they have to be held to account for that. And people should make sure that they are held to account. Now, the Speaker of the House that honored this guy has been forced to resign. That's not enough. The hero himself, the Nazi hero, should be deported. I don't care if he's 98 years old. He should be deported. He should be made to understand, and the people of Canada should be made to understand that you must be held to account for your actions. And whether he was 20 years old or 21 years old or 19, when he volunteered to join what he knew was a Nazi brigade, at a time when everybody knew that the Nazis were murdering Jews in Ukraine, there's no excuse for that. There's no justification for that. He must be held to account for everything that he did. I don't care how young he was at the time or how old he is now. Justice demands that we hold people to account for what they have done. Did Zelensky bring along this 98-year-old war hero? No, he didn't know about it at all. Apparently, everybody was caught by surprise. Trudeau, there's a picture of Trudeau clapping. There's a picture of Zelensky clapping. They didn't know who he was. Apparently, maybe the speaker did or maybe the speaker didn't. I don't know. what the speaker's relationship is to the person himself. But we know that Trudeau and Zelensky didn't know anything about it. All right, Richard the Lionhearted purged the Jews. You're right. In fact, I have a name for Richard. I call him Richard the Chicken-Hearted. Richard was an awful, awful king. He was the one who sent the Crusaders down to kill and murder thousands of people, unarmed people, women and children. That's not the Lionhearted. That's the Chicken-Hearted. So Richard should go down in history as somebody who was a mass murderer, a genocidal killer. But yes, he did purge the Jews, and he killed many of them on the way to the Crusades, as did many of the Roman emperors like Titus. When Saladin conquered Jerusalem, he debated the necessity of purging Jewish population. There was very little Jewish population at the time, but decided not to. Certainly the Inquisition persecuted Jews, especially in Spain and Portugal as well. The list goes on and on. Anti-Semitism is truly a medieval concept and should have died out centuries ago. Yeah, it should have, but it didn't. And anti-Semitism is rearing its ugly head again. Today, it's called anti-Zionism, but it's essentially the same thing. There is only one nation state of the Jewish people. If there were only one nation state for African people and only that state were being picked on by the United Nations and by academics, we'd know what to call it. And the kind of anti-Zionism that says Zionism sells us rotten meats on the corner of 125th Street. That's using Zionism as a euphemism for Judaism. And Malcolm X was guilty of that, as were other Black radical leaders and other leftist leaders in the United States, even today. So anti-Semitism is not over and gone. Okay, here's one that I like. Didn't Kissinger, remember I talked about Kissinger and Kissinger being Jewish, didn't Kissinger become an Episcopalian? No. He sat next to me in shul last year and in Hebrew recited the prayer for the dead for his parents. He's not an Episcopalian, but I have to tell you a funny story about that. So when I married my beautiful and smart wife, Carolyn Cohen from Charleston, South Carolina, my mother was sitting on the porch of the Sterling Hotel, which was a kosher hotel in Miami Beach. And she overheard a conversation at the other side of the porch. Oh, that Dershowitz. Yeah. He's good on Israel, but why did he have to marry a non-Jew? And so my mother, of course, was at our wedding and knew that I married the daughter of Mordecai Cohen and Dorothy Cohen, active Jews in Charleston. She went over to the group and said, why are you, she didn't identify herself, why are you saying that Alan Dershowitz married somebody who wasn't Jewish? And they said, oh, well, we know that. They all do. Kissinger did. And then they name all the other Jews. And Dershowitz did too. And my mother said, well, I know for sure that his wife, Carolyn Cohen, is Jewish. And the woman said, yeah, that's the story they're putting out. Jews can be their worst enemies, and they often are. Okay, last question. Why save someone who has committed a brutal murder? So this is the man that I'm trying to save on death row. You'll notice again, I'm wearing my high tie, the tie that says life, the tie I wore when I helped save other people from death row. And I'm wearing this until this case gets resolved. He's scheduled to be executed on October 10th. Yes, he committed a murder. Brutal. Every murder is brutal. It was a carjacking, and he shot the victim once, and she died. There are thousands of brutal murders every year, but why did he get the death penalty? He got the death penalty, as very few murderers do. He got the death penalty because he was accused, not formally, just by the prosecutor in this case, of having previously engaged in a carjacking, but he didn't. And the evidence is overwhelming that they made a mistake and they charged the wrong person for that. And also they predicted that he'd be violent. And he's been in prison now for 20 years and hasn't had any violence against guards or fellow inmates or anyone else. So I am defending this man. I am working very hard to defend this man, and I hope I can save him, though it's very, very, very uphill. Most governors will commute only if you can make a plausible claim that the person himself is innocent of the underlying crime, we can't make that claim, and we're not going to make that claim. What we're saying is he should not be subject to the death penalty based on factors that have proved to be untrue, a prior carjacking and a prediction of violence. So that's why I'm so deeply involved in this case. All right. See you next week.